So today Acer announced a couple of new gaming laptops, the Acer Predator 300 SE in a refreshed 14-inch version and an all-new 16-inch model. I put all new in quotes because I pulled this thing out of the box. I'm like, I could have sworn I just reviewed this a week ago, right? The Acer Triton 500 SE looks identical to this. So I took the 500 SE out of the box, placed it right beside it, and I'm like, no, this 300 SE is not an all-new design. It's using the chassis of the 500 SE and it's omitting a few things. And they should omit a few things because this is aimed at a lower price point. It's for a very different market. But calling it all new is kind of a bit of a stretch, especially when the weight is exactly the same at 5.29 pounds. They share the exact same dimension. The displays go back 180 degrees, the same bezels, the same keyboard layout. However, you do have a black keyboard with the Triton compared to a darker gray on the 300 SE. In fact, I would probably say sticker placement is identical, which is pretty impressive. Usually you get different jobs on different models. Touchpad is the same, fingerprint scanner is the same. The only difference, or not only difference, but one of the differences is the port layout. You lose a Thunderbolt 4 port on the 3SE. So you only get one on the right-hand side instead of having two, and you don't get a full-size SD card slot, but they did replace it with a micro SD card instead. Now the 500 SE was meant to be the premium laptop for Acer. Like, this is spec'd with an i9 12900H and an RTX 3080 Ti. The new 300 SE doesn't go up that high. The max you can get it with is an i7 12700H and an RTX 3070 Ti. Quite frankly, that's kind of the sweet spot for this style of laptop. When you go this thin and the GPU is only pushing a max TGP of 105 to 115 watts, you don't really want to go to a 3080 Ti anyways, because you're going to be overpaying to get slightly more performance, and it's just not worth it at that point. The other big advantage of going with the 300 SE is the internals, because unlike the 500 SE, you don't have to remove the motherboard to replace the drives. Everything is on the proper side. You can actually upgrade the RAM. It's accessible. It's right in front of you. It's easy to take off the lid. You can swap this out, put as much RAM in here as this thing can handle. Then you have a swappable Wi-Fi card, which is Wi-Fi 6E, that you can replace yourself. This is just a lot more manageable. Now, the 14-inch version of the 300 SE is the one I'm more excited about because the previous version of this was kind of disappointing. It only had a 4-core processor, it was 16:9, and it just couldn't compete against the ASUS G14 or Blade 14. But this guy has been refreshed in the right way. For one, they got rid of the 16:9 aspect ratio at 16:10. So if you live that creative life but also love to game, this is the display you want. You now have the option to buy it with OLED. Like, this here is a 3K OLED display and it looks absolutely stunning. Like, the color accuracy, the brightness, it just looks impeccable. The only thing I don't like is that it's only 90 Hertz. Like, if you're a gamer, 90 Hertz is still better than 60, but I would have loved to have at least 120 Hertz at the absolute minimum. The good news though is you don't have to buy it with an OLED display. There's a 2K display of this that supports 165 Hertz, and there's even a 1920 by 1200 display that supports the same refresh rate. It has the same sort of keyboard as the bigger 16-inch version. It's very comfortable to type on. Key travel distance is a little shallow, but there's a nice click to it. It does feel like a gaming keyboard. The other thing is you do have a good selection of I/O with your power connector, USB-A port, Thunderbolt 4 port, and then on the other side, you have a full-size HDMI port. This is 2.1, USB-A, and a headphone jack. Again, I would have loved them to place the ports closer to the back or on the back, but I guess it just wasn't possible with this design. I should also mention, which I totally forgot at the beginning of this video, that these are engineering samples. So I can't show you guys benchmarks. I can only talk about the laptops. I promise to do that in a future video. But from a spec standpoint, being able to get an i9 12900H inside of here is already better than the ASUS G14. It's already better than the Blade 14, at least in terms of gaming. Maybe not battery life, but at least in terms of gaming, having that i9 or even i7 is just a better processor for performance. Now, unfortunately, you can only spec it up to an RTX 3060. And you know what? For a lot of people, this might be enough, right? An RTX 3060 is still a great GPU to game comfortably at 1920 by 1200. You can play a lot of older titles or optimized titles at QHD. If you don't mind dropping the settings a bit, it's still a very solid GPU. I think the GPU TGP is around 100 watts with about 10 watts of dynamic boost. So it's not the weakest GPU. It's right in line with the 14-inch competition. Now there's probably one dude, and I say a dude because this is a tech channel and 93% of the audience is male. It's a huge sausage party. And he's gonna ask me to test the speakers. I've already listened to them. They don't sound good. I don't remember ever using an Acer laptop where it actually had good speakers. It's just an afterthought for them, and the same holds true here. Now, this is the Predator Sense software. It allows you to do things like change the lighting. You have 3 zones that you can change lighting for. It's not per key RGB, and just like most other Acer laptops, if you want to change the performance modes, it has to be plugged in and it has to be over 40% battery life. The other thing is, because this is the OLED version, there is no mux switch. If you want the mux switch, you have to buy one of the models with the IPS displays. But internally, you can upgrade the NVMe SSD or swap out the Wi-Fi card. RAM is soldered onto the motherboard, but you can spec it up to 32 gigabytes, which is good. You take something like the Blade 14 and the highest you can go is 16 gigabytes. Battery size is 74 watt hours. Again, engineering sample, so I don't know the battery life. But they are using liquid metal on the CPU and GPU, so temps should be lower than the previous version. So here's the thing, I'm really digging the 14-inch version of the 300 SE. I think if the price is right, this could be a very competitive option to the G14 and the Blade 14. You get more memory, you get an Intel processor which performs faster, is better for gaming, and you pair with an RTX 3060, which is obviously not the fastest GPU compared to the other two, but it might be a good combo overall. The only drawback is because they're using an Intel processor, I can't imagine battery life being good as the G14 or the Blade 14. The 300 SE, on the other hand, is interesting because this is essentially the Triton 500 SE. And if that's a laptop that you're really attracted to, but don't want to spend $3,000 on, then this might be a better alternative. Quite frankly, if I was to choose this or the 500 SE, I'd probably lean towards this. You'll save yourself a few bucks. The 3070 Ti is the sweet spot in terms of this chassis size. And the RAM and drive are both easy to get to and upgrade. Now again, these are engineering samples. I would have loved to show you guys benchmarks, but I promise to do that in my full review. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. If you're interested in picking these guys up or the Triton 500 SE, there'll be links to that too. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.